the Clayman Institute for Gender Research at Stanford University. Reinvigorating gender equality in the 21st century.
Welcome, everybody. This is the kickoff event for the winter series of things that we have coming up at the Clayman Institute. For those of you who've been coming to our events for the past quarter, you know that we've been focusing on the theme of moving beyond the stalled revolution. And so I could think of no better speaker to have today to kick off the winter series given this topic than Paula England. In 2008, she was selected by the Sociologists for Women in Society as their feminist lecturer for the year. And the talk she's going to be given today is that lecture. And it's now been published in Gender and Society. So I think we're very lucky actually to have her here today, especially since she's on leave at NYU this year. So she's back at Stanford for just a few days, and I asked her on that short visit to come and talk with us today, and she agreed. And I personally really appreciate that, Paula, and look forward to hearing your comments.
Thanks, Shelley, for that nice introduction. I want to look at trends, and I'm looking at the United States, in gender inequality with an eye to whether women change more than men. And in my title, when I say uneven gender revolution, I partly mean, is the gender revolution mostly women changing or mostly men changing or both? Second, how gender equalizing change varies by social class, which just for somewhat ease of measurement, I'll approximate by education. And so that's also partly the uneven part of my title. That is, did the gender revolution happen differentially by class? And then the stalled part, how much has change on different things been continuous, or is it stalled? So first, asymmetric gender change. And the basic pattern, if you think of everything that's changed, is women enter male domains a lot more than men enter female domains, female domains in quotes, partly because the things men have traditionally done give greater rewards of money or status. So the incentives are for men to stay where they are and women to move. And that's part of why men don't move a lot of times, for example, into predominantly female jobs or into homemaking. But also, they receive a lot of cultural disapproval and peer disapproval if they do so. In the case of women, the rewards are greater in male jobs, in male activities, so that encourages women to move into them. Now, there is some cultural backlash against them, but on the other hand, not as much as when men or boys deviate. And you can see that by just thinking of, who gets more flack, the sissy or the tomboy. It's very clear the asymmetry there. Now, I want to give you some data on what college grads majored in. Because for the people that go to college, major is very important in what occupation they end up in. So I'm going to give you a series of graphs that take the same form, so let me just get your head into the form. What's on the y-axis is the percent of all women who majored in this in a given year, or the percent of all men who majored in this in a given year. That is, it's not what percent was the major female, it's what percent of the sex of everybody getting a BA majored in that thing. What you see here is that the percent of men who have majored in business as an undergraduate major, with the denominator being all men getting bachelor's degrees, is pretty constant. What really happened is women dramatically increased. But notice how all the action came by the mid-'80s. Since then it's pretty flat, and women never quite caught up with men, but they're sort of tracking along together. So this, too, is an example. You've got the stalling at the end, but on my theme of asymmetry, it's an example of women moving into a field that was predominantly male. Now let's take the flip side, a major that's always historically been disproportionately female, English. So here what you see is, okay, there's a little bit of decline in men's and then it's pretty flat, but basically what happened is the proportion of women majoring in English plummeted. Again, that had played out by the mid-'80s. And since then, women didn't quite converge, get down as low as men, but men and women are kind of moving along together since. So you see here where women have left female activities, and of course some of those women are going into male majors, men haven't increased their representation in this female major. So those were some examples of the asymmetry of women changing more than men. Now I want to give some examples of what I'll call class-gender intersections. That is, does the gender change that happens, which I've already said is usually taking the form of women moving in some way towards more male-typical activities, has that happened differentially by social class? Well, using education as a rough indicator, my argument is going to be that there's less gender equalizing change among the less educated, or you could say among the working class, than among the better educated, like college grads. And that's true for occupational segregation, desegregation, and employment. So the point here is that what happened from 1970 to 2000 is that the degree of occupational sex segregation of college graduates plummeted. It declined for the less educated as well, but not anywhere near as much. Now, I should clarify that what's on the y-axis here is an index of segregation. A simple way to think about it is the numerator of it is the proportion of men or women that would have to change occupations to have every occupation be integrated. Where integrated doesn't mean 50-50, but it means whatever the proportion men and women are in the labor force, each occupation will reflect that. I mean, 0 is perfect integration, high is segregation. So the point is, there was lots of desegregation for college grads, much less for everybody else. The big picture here on occupational sex segregation is that women integrated male occupations, but that was done much more by women with college degrees than, we'll say, working class women. Now, the argument that in my paper I stressed was the following, that women that are in non-college female jobs, like waitress or secretary, could increase their earnings either through moving to male jobs, because in fact a lot of the blue-collar male jobs will actually pay better, or they could get more education and move into a higher status traditionally female job like teacher, nurse, or social worker. So in one sense, blue-collar women or women who are probably destined, by their background, say, as blue-collar or working class, could think about increasing their earnings in these two ways. Both internalized gender identities and possible harassment by men in the male jobs are going to encourage the latter. That may be one reason that we see more occupational desegregation in higher level professional jobs. So I guess when we put it all together, what I'm saying is that the steeper desegregation among college graduates is, at least in part, because people are more, to put it more abstractly, likely to violate taken for granted gender paths when staying in that path doesn't permit upward mobility. So implicit in this is an idea that, well, everybody's trying to, this is America, everybody's trying to move up. Upward mobility is seen as good in either status or earnings, but people also have these gender blinders on. So some people go to move up and they see, oh, well, the way I guess I can move up is I can stay within traditionally female stuff, but just get more education and move up. The other way is to transgress the gender boundaries, and I'm saying the people for whom the only way to do it, to move up, was to transgress the gender boundaries are the ones that were most likely to do it. My third question was, is change stalled? And my answer is yes. I've shown you already a bunch of examples of that. So here is the traditional way you see the sex gap in pay, what women are earning as a ratio of what men are earning at the median. There is continued progress, but you can definitely see less steep and clear progress as you get into the 90s. My other conclusion, and this gets back to the stalled theme, is that there's nothing inexorable about change. Women's employment stops growing largely around 1990. Desegregation of occupations and sex gap and pay have slowed. desegregation of college majors stopped by 85, egalitarian attitudes got more egalitarian, then it got less so, and then it back up, they wax and wane. What I would say about this is, I've sometimes written, and many of us that are gender scholars have written about kind of how, one part of the gender system encourages the other part, and it's this sort of interlocking system where you can't change one thing unless you change another thing. And we bring up those kind of arguments when we're trying to explain why things aren't changing to begin with. But of course, some things have really changed. And there I think you start seeing, well, maybe the system is a little more loosely coupled than we thought. And some things are much more impervious to change than others. And I think some of the lower hanging fruit has been picked. I also think I had this tacit assumption that I wasn't even recognizing that, kind of once this kind of change starts, because everything will help unpack everything else, it will just be continuous. But, that's probably unrealistic. So, things are stalled, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised that at least that's possible.